Hello everybody. Yeah, my name is Raido and I'm happy to present one of our projects which has been done in EC3 Technical Committee, Modeling and Standards Committee. So as you see, there are quite many people who are behind of this research. And I will give you a brief introduction also to our committee. And then we move forward. What's the background of this research? Explain methods and also give you some concentrated view of our results. But I'm also happy to share a link to public dashboard, and you can actually hopefully screen grab it during my presentation, and also conclusion and future work. So introduction. This is our Modeling and Standards Committee on the EC3, which is currently led by Dr. Marzia Bolpagni. But this research, once again, has been carried out by all of our key members in this committee who are responsible of different parts in this research. So first, background. We all know that there are lots of standards. Is it EN standard? Is it ISO standard? Is it some local standard body? And we have lack of access and comprehension for users. So quite often standards are there, but people don't know how to use it, in which case to use it. So the methodology is briefly graphed here. So we first did some literature review and then identified and collected PIM standards, especially which were belonging under PIM term. But I will later in future studies explain that we don't stop there. And based on those PIM standards, now we did at first qualitative analysis. So we reviewed those standards. We tried to identify different components, values for different stakeholders as such. And then we moved to quantitative analysis, and especially this quantitative analysis is shown also through web app, which I mentioned already. Let's talk about literature review and identification, how many standards were included. First, we were looking into European standards and ISO standards, and we selected 18 key standards on the European standards body. But because we were extended the study in such a way that if in one standard there are connections to different base standards or normative standards, those were also included. And this is kind of giving a much broader view. What do you need actually to be able to use some particular standard? Of course, standards change in time, and we hope to get updated, give updates also to this tool. But currently, yes, there are about 18, and we were focused on published standards. We all know that there are also preliminary ones, which might get public quite soon. On the right-hand side, you see a kind of template which tries to give an overview, but I will focus more to those components later on as well. But it tries to visualize what kind of outputs we were looking from standards. Of course, publication year, but also the first publication year of some particular standards, because there are some renewals happening, yes, and quite often they do introduce some big changes. Also some summary in plain language, which is not a copy and paste from the standard itself, but we tried to kind of make it easier for a reader. And also quite big part is then what other standards are connected or referred in those, we selected those standards, yes, like normative standards, also reference standards. It's easier to explain this through qualitative analysis. First of all, as I showed you, our group was quite big, and those standards were analyzed and peer-reviewed by our own experts, but we also shared this data with SEN members, local committees, and of course we are still waiting some feedback as well. So you may say that maybe it's just one viewpoint, but we are open to any kind of questions you may have once you start using this tool. So it's not anyhow fixed, the results, yes. And so then during this qualitative analysis, we included a selection of different stakeholders who might be users of those standards, also phases and key concepts, and then some graphs were drawn. I will show you, for example, some of those components now, 1 to 10, what kind of components we included, like, for example, if there are references to other standards, how we can evaluate what the relationship is. Is it strongly related? Is it medium or low? Yeah. Do you really need that standard to read as well to get the basics? So different standard groups like reference standards, normative, but also related standards, those were different groups in here to study. But also concepts like in where this standard could be applied or used, phases, and also stakeholders. And when we talk about stakeholders, and maybe a little comment here that, of course, there are many other roles, but we found, at least at this stage, that those are most meaningful, but of course there are also roles that are kind of merging with some particular role, like who is working with a client directly, who is working a contractor directly in terms of BIM as such. And now I move forward to quantitative analysis. Once we have such information available, we were generating a table which was a base to further analysis, yes? So in here you just see a column map how this data was used to generate the table. We are also thinking that we hopefully make this table open source so that anybody can check and see how we have done it. And the results from this slide, you can already make a picture of this QR code and go directly to the web page in where you actually can also play around this tool. But you can also find it from EC3 website. So, and I will show you this QR code a bit later as well. And I briefly explain what you will see now, or what you can do with this tool. First of all, you see a kind of a first page in where you can select a role, for example, who you are or what kind of standards you are interested, which applies to specific role. Also relevance, you can select high, medium, low, maybe all of those, yes. But maybe you want to start which are kind of with high relevance, and those descriptions are also given on that page. And then you get the list of number of standards. Now there are different views. This is a kind of filtering of standards, what we searched. But then you can also start to draw connections in between standards. And those views are colorized. As you see, there are different domains and you can select also a domain what interests you. And in addition, also it's a possibility that you are playing with a time, meaning that you can see what connections were available, let's say maybe 10 years ago, and what connections are available now or in recent years. And you start to see that there are kind of islands which are not connected with each other at some point in time. But when major standards are coming into play, like 19650 series, then the connectivity changes a lot. In here you can see a historical view, and also pay attention to that 2020 or close to that, 2019, more standards are published. And some results, centrality analysis, like if you pick a key standard which was analyzed, it's in red, and then as I mentioned, this standard refers to different other standards and how they connect with each other. So you get a better viewpoint what should be kind of studied in background as well. And just some visualizations, information delivery process, you see through colorizing construction domain, specification of information, and some conclusions. Of course, our preliminary studies showed some, let's say, issues. For example, BIM standards were found to be applicable to most roles and phases. So searching under these themes is not very insightful. We do need create a granularity in here, and this is definitely one of our future focus. As I already mentioned, when 19650 and 12006 came along, they are kind of connecting quite many standards together. And you can play around by yourself if you kind of move to that time slot to see the connections appear. And it's mainly to understand the relationships between standards, which you should pay attention to read in addition. And also missing links were discovered between BIM-related and other standards. And we believe that some of our future standards can fill these gaps, especially as we saw that some new standards were filling gap in history, then there will be probably some improvements in following years as well. So increased publication of standards 2019 or from this year. Future work, maintain and update public dashboard. Again, you see a QR code which you can grab with your phone, and we are really waiting your feedback to this work. We definitely extend the coverage of standards also to other topics which relates to BIM. Thank you for your attention, and questions please.